Hi, I'm Hal Roberts. This is Bridge City News. Here's some of the top stories we've been following. Ukraine has won the battle for Kiev. That's according to U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken, who has more details. Another freedom convoy is headed to Ottawa. Political reporter Brian Lilly explains how this one may look a little different. And a Christian musical group is making its way through our city, incorporating blacklight theater. BCN's Micah Quinn has the details.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. The list of arms flowing into Ukraine is growing longer, including the most modern Canadian and American artillery. U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin convened a meeting of defense ministers and top military leaders from around 40 countries in Germany today. Austin told reporters the goal is to not just support Ukrainian defenses, but to help them prevail against a much larger invading force. Canadian Defense Minister Anita Anand says Canada will continue to send weapons and is entering into contracts with defense suppliers for even more weaponry. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken testified before the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, imploring that the United States must not let up in its support for Ukraine. Blinken, who was just in Ukraine, says the country has already won the battle for its capital, Kiev.
We saw the signs of a vibrant city coming back to life, people eating outside, sitting on benches, strolling. It was right in front of us. The Ukrainians have won the battle for Kiev. And for all the suffering that they've endured, for all the carnage that Russia's brutal invasion continues to inflict, Ukraine was and will continue to be a free and independent country.
Now, speaking on state television, Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov says the West is waging a proxy war. He says with NATO getting involved and more involved with the war, there's even a chance of a nuclear conflict.
Вооружения будут законной целью для российских вооруженных сил, которые действуют в рамках специальной операции. И, конечно, мне очень не хотелось бы, чтобы сейчас, когда, как вы и сказали, ссылаясь на Грэма Эллисона и других уважаемых политологов, и склады, в том числе на западе Украины, уже не один раз становились такой целью. Поэтому, а как иначе? Если НАТО, по сути дела, вступает в войну с Россией, такую через прокси, и вооружает этого прокси, ну, на войне как на войне. Новоиспеченного, который...
Meanwhile, evacuations from a frontline neighborhood in Kharkiv continued as 5 people were killed and 9 others were injured from Russian military shelling, according to Ukraine's government.
Ну, я думаю, они делают это специально. Эти все разрушения по гражданской инфраструктуре для того, чтобы напугать людей, ввести их в панику. Видите, у нас там по состоянию, по-моему, на начало апреля больше было погибших гражданских, нежели военных. Поэтому это прямой откровенный геноцид.
Now, closer to home, we first brought you news of avian flu in Alberta and Manitoba. There are reports now that a poultry flock in Kelowna, BC, have also tested positive. It is the second reported outbreak of flocks in the province. The BC Minister of Agriculture is working closely with the Canadian Food Inspection Agency and poultry producers on a quarantine plan. Producers within a 12-kilometer radius have been notified. Another freedom rally is headed to our nation's capital. Political reporter Brian Lilly says this one, known as Rolling Thunder, may look a little bit different once it arrives in Ottawa.
Well, they're not going to allow vehicles near Parliament. Now, this does not surprise me because we've been hearing that this could become a permanent feature of protests, since the Freedom Convoy arrived in January, or I guess in February, as things started to get tense. A lot of people saying, look, we shouldn't even allow traffic on Wellington Street in front of Parliament Hill. I'm not sure that the people of Ottawa want to go that far, but there is a desire to say, look, you protest all you want, but you can't bring vehicles up.
Brian Lilly will also have the latest on how the Trudeau Liberals may be attempting to censor Canadians. That interview is coming up after business news. Well, we enjoyed another warm spring day in Lethbridge, and the warmer weather should be sticking around. Jeanette Rocher is in now with a quick peek at the forecast. Jeanette, even though we're enjoying milder temperatures, we may also see some spring showers?
Yeah, that's right. We're looking at showers tonight, showers Thursday night, and coming up on Friday. I'd rather have the rain than the snow. It is almost May after all. Now, with those showers, wind. We're talking 50 to 70 kilometer per hour wind gusts this evening. Those winds sticking around into tomorrow, bringing with it the sunshine, though, and the double-digit temperatures, of course. Those temperatures sticking around. I will have what the rest of the week is looking like later on in the show.
Great. Thanks so much, Jeanette. A new nonprofit group is getting off the ground here in our city to support those who've been impacted by the war in Ukraine. Project Sunflower works closely with Ukrainians overseas to help them get visas and will assist those finding suitable housing once they've arrived in Canada. Now, one of the board members of the organization is Devin Hargraves, who says it feels great to be part of something so significant.
I've always believed if you see something that needs to be done, step up and help do it. And I was fortunate right away to be able to connect with Misha Kuraburza, who is currently the chair of Project Sunflower. We met coordinating the rallies in support of Ukraine together. And having family in Ukraine myself, it's a very vital topic to me. My family at this time is not looking to leave. So it's doing what we can to assist here in any way possible.
Through the organization, Hargreaves says they hope to potentially put together some fundraising efforts to buy items like plane tickets for those fleeing Ukraine. A local nonprofit group wants to change the way hospice care is being administered. The Guided Journeys Foundation is hosting their Walk to Remember to raise funds for a new hospice here in Lethbridge. Video journalist Micah Quinn has the details on the important walk.
Death does touch everyone, and absolutely every single person deserves the best quality of life until the end of their life.
Kinga Zentner and Celeste Ment, members of the Guided Journeys Foundation, say the group was formed with the goal of building a community hospice facility to represent southern Alberta and provide care for those who are at the end of their lives.
There is no hospice in Lethbridge, so there's nothing in southern Alberta, south of Okotoks, but there is palliative care offered here in Lethbridge, and a lot of what our program will do is will educate people about what palliative care is and what a hospice is.
The Walk to Remember is the first fundraiser for the group, and the foundation is inviting anyone to come. The event is also an honor walk.
People can come in honor of people that have passed away or any of their loved ones to do this walk and take part in it.
Members of the foundation say in order to build a hospice facility, it would cost millions of dollars.
So we'd like to give the opportunity for those living here and in the surrounding area to help build Guided Journeys and to be a part of this journey with us. Of course, we're always going to explore and look into other avenues of funding, including grants.
The Walk to Remember will start at the Kiwanis Picnic Shelter in Henderson Lake on June 5th at 2 p.m. For more information on the event, you can visit guidedjourneys.ca. For Bridge City News, I'm Micah Quinn.
The Lethbridge Hurricanes returned home from Edmonton and are hosting their first WHL playoff game against the Oil Kings. Now, as Nathan Ryder reports, the Canes trail in this series, but lead in excitement and are happy to be back on home ice.
For the first time since 2019, there will be playoff hockey at the NMAX Center. The Lethbridge Hurricanes trail the Edmonton Oil Kings 2-0 in their best-of-7 first-round series. Lethbridge has only scored a single goal in the series so far, but assistant coach Matt Anholt says the team is not discouraged.
Just stay with it. Stay with it. You know, we've been playing well. We just have to get a little puck luck. We're getting looks. You know, we just got to have a little bit more timely scoring when we do get those looks. So, we just stick with it, keep working, trust the process, and the goals will come.
Because of the long period between playoffs for the Hurricanes, there are a few players on the roster with postseason experience. Overage forward Justin Hall appeared in 2 games for Lethbridge in 2019, a series which the Hurricanes lost in 7 games to the Calgary Hitmen. He says playoff hockey is a tough challenge compared to the regular season.
Playoffs are always tough. It was tough back then. It's tough now. The game's so much faster than regular season. Everybody's so much hungrier to win games and stuff, so it's always faster, harder to play.
The Hurricanes are looking forward to having the home crowd behind them. Both Hall and Anholt say it's an awesome experience to play postseason hockey in Lethbridge.
We're really excited. It's been a long time since there was a playoff game in this building. So we're really excited. We're pumped to have our fans, see a playoff game live for a long time.
Yeah, no, it's pretty awesome. Obviously, this is a great barn, great fans, some of the best in the league. So, to play in front of them is pretty special. I haven't really done it in my career yet, so it's pretty awesome to do that.
Game 3 of the series will go on Tuesday night and Game 4 on Thursday. Puck drop for both games is at 7 p.m. The series will shift back to Edmonton for Game 5 if necessary. For Bridge City News, I'm Nathan Ryder.
Hopefully the Canes can come back in that series. A Lethbridge church group calling themselves the Emmanuelites are working very hard to bring forth a special show on Friday evening. As BCN's Micah Quinn explains now, the group performs a unique version of blacklight theater.
Members range in age from 13 to 19 years old, and the group has been performing in Lethbridge since 2015.
The performers are dressed completely in black from head to toe, including black masks, black gloves, black socks, everything. Because skin glows, blonde hair glows, teeth glow, eyeballs glow, so they have to be completely covered.
One of the members of the group passed away in January, and Fight Song by the artist Rachel Platten was requested by their parents during the funeral.
Fight Song was one of her favorite songs, so we actually created that piece for her funeral, and it's carrying forward with our shows as a tribute to her.
For the senior performers in the group, Sierra Kruselbrink and Joel Clausen, they've been performing for years with the Emmanuelites.
Everybody is always so welcome, and we get to be able to perform, and it's a great way to kind of spread the gospel through a fun, new, exciting way.
I like that I don't have to show my face when I'm performing. If I mess up, no one knows it's me that messed up.
Two of the newest entertainers for the group, Shayla and Miles, have nothing but love for blacklight theater.
And it's always been something I've wanted to do. Since I was really young, I would always say in grade 9, I'm going to do blacklight theater, and I love it so much.
My older sibling, who is also in the group, was here as soon as they could, so I always wanted to do it, sometimes to annoy them, because as siblings do, but it just seemed really fun, and it's enjoyable to get on stage and perform.
The Emmanuelites will be performing on Friday evening for the One Life Church Dessert fundraiser to raise funds for upgrades and renovations at the church. For Bridge City News, I'm Micah Quinn.
That's pretty cool. There's apparently no water flowing in the Lethbridge Northern Irrigation District due to an alleged blockage. There are unconfirmed reports that the blockage is occurring on the Piikani Nation. Now, officials from the nation say this is not the case. In a statement released to Bridge City News, the Piikani Nation says the Piikani Chief and Council have been working constructively for years to resolve outstanding issues and ensure the Piikani's interests are preserved as part of what is a massive water infrastructure project on our land that directly affects us. Those discussions are ongoing. This is why, since 2018, we have requested meetings with the Alberta government to address this very important issue. The lack of water flow in the irrigation district could spell disaster for southern Alberta farmers. A lack of moisture last year meant reservoirs were already low. Kara Oosterhuis, a field editor with Real Agriculture here in Lethbridge, says water is sorely needed for both farmers and ranchers.
I've heard from different sources that there's about 700,000 head of cattle in the Picture Butte Feedlot Alley area, and that is a lot. And not just cattle, there's chickens, there's dairy, there's pigs and hogs involved. So there's a lot of different animals that are involved in this. And I know, talking to quite a few producers around the Picture Butte area that have feedlots, they're all saying it's going to be real soon. If there's no water moving in the next week, we're going to be in a dire situation because, as you know, there was a huge drought last year. There was barely next to no runoff because we had absolutely no snow this winter. So the dugouts are already getting low. The reservoirs are low. And we got to be able to get water to these animals.
Oosterhuis adds that the irrigation district may ask producers to truck in water from areas such as Kehoe Lake if the lack of moisture continues. The Alberta government announced it is investing $50 million to create a new clean hydrogen centre. Officials say it will drive innovation in the production, deployment, and use of hydrogen across the province. Premier Jason Kenney says Canada and Alberta are ready to shift towards a hydrogen-powered future.
We've seen estimates for the hydrogen sector ranging from $2.5 to $11 trillion in global value by the year 2050. But whatever this size will end up being, we know that Alberta will be a key global hub and provider in that enormous future market. We have everything that we needed to become a major producer of clean, reliable, and affordable hydrogen energy. We've got the natural resources, including enormous capacity in natural gas, the 5th largest proven and probable gas reserves in the world, over 200 years worth of supply at current production levels.
An audit of the City of Calgary's budget shows a $147 million surplus. Calgary Mayor Jyoti Gondek says the money doesn't mean residents have been overtaxed. She says there are always revenue variations due to fluctuating assessments of property values. The extra funds are to remain in the city's reserve until councillors decide what to do with it. Visitors to Banff National Park will need to plan ahead if they want to view the mountain vistas at Lake Louise and Moraine Lake. Parks Canada is moving its park and ride location to Lake Louise Ski Resort from a lot along the Trans-Canada Highway. The agency says there will be no first-come, first-served seats on the buses. Reservations will be required for shuttles up to the lakes where parking is extremely limited. BC Premier John Horgan says he's sorry for using profanity during a debate with opposition Liberals over his province's shortage of family doctors. Question period ended with the Speaker calling on members to behave like adults and to refrain from making debates personal. Liberal House Leader Todd Stone rose in the legislature shortly afterwards, requesting a point of privilege to discuss the matter further at another time. Premier Horgan later returned and apologized, saying his passion for health care got the better of him. Construction on the expansion of the emergency department at Winnipeg St. Boniface Hospital has begun. Manitoba Premier Heather Stephenson says the new ER will reduce wait times, provide more space for patients, and improve experiences for both patients and staff. Health officials say there were close to 48,000 visits to the emergency department in 2019. Projections are for that to increase to 55,000 once the new ER is set to open in the fall of 2025. Well, the Toronto Raptors are trying to become the first team in NBA history to come back from being 3 games down in a playoff series. They took another step on Monday night, beating the Sixers in Philadelphia 103-88. Raptors head coach Nick Nurse said it was a good defensive game for his team.
My goal wasn't necessarily to turn them over. It was just that we ran hard to shooters and things like that. And I think for the most part we did, especially early. And I think that matters early, you know. Yeah, it was. They played hard for the whole game defensively. We're generating, for the most part, really good shots, and you know they should feel good about that. They're just kind of moving the pieces around, and you know we've got a few little principles that we're trying to follow, and they're doing a good job of it. We're getting just enough, you know, transition bucket here or there, cut to the rim here or there, dump off here or there to get us at the rim enough as well. And I think the looks are still really good from the perimeter.
Hopefully Canada's team, the Toronto Raptors, can come all the way back and win this series. Well, we enjoyed another warm spring-like day here in southwestern Alberta, but there's a chance of some moisture developing in our region. Full weather details are coming up. We had kind of a mixed bag today. Some sunshine, clouds, and even some spotty showers in areas of southwestern Alberta. Jeanette Rocher is in now with all of the weather details. Jeanette, the spring shower should bring us those Mayflowers?
Well, let's hope so, Hal, because I could really use some beautiful spring colors in my life right now. Enough with this brown and gray already. Yeah, it's almost May. What can I say? Okay, so into this evening, we're looking at a 30% chance of showers, 50 to 70 kilometer per hour wind gusts. Those wind gusts sticking around into Wednesday with a high of 12 degrees. Lots of sunshine, though. Sunny skies on Thursday, high of 14. 12 the high on Friday with some showers. Those showers actually starting Thursday night, going into Friday. Sunshine on Saturday with a high of 16, and then 16 straight across the board for Sunday and Monday. So we're finally getting back into those seasonal temperatures. Average high for this time of year, 15. Average low, 1. 27 was our high temperature back in 1992. And in 1967, Lethbridge was sitting at minus 13. Kind of chilly for this time of year. 6:18 is when the sun rose this morning, and our sun set this evening at 8:41 p.m., giving us 14 hours and 23 minutes of daylight. Okay, so showers expected tomorrow on the west coast. Victoria's high 11, 12 degrees the high in Vancouver with 30% chance of showers. Both of those cities. Edmonton also looking at some showers ending around noon tomorrow. 8 degrees the high. Sunshine in Calgary, high of 13 degrees. As we look to the prairies, this is where we see things start to change up a little bit. Actually, Saskatoon is looking at some showers, possibility of a thunderstorm later on in the day, 15 degrees the high. Now, Regina is looking at a possibility of some flurries tomorrow, could be changing to freezing rain, 11 degrees the high. That's not great for this time of year. 6 degrees the high in Winnipeg, by the way, with lots of sunshine there. Look what's happening in Toronto and Ottawa tomorrow. We're seeing chance of flurries in Toronto. I thought it was the, spring, almost May here. 6 degrees the high there, 7 degrees the high in Ottawa, and 5 in Montreal. Montreal expecting showers tomorrow as we look to Fredericton, seeing heavy rains tomorrow. 10 to 15 millimeters of rain, 7 degrees the high, 7 the high in Halifax tomorrow with 5 millimeters of rain, and 10 millimeters expected in Charlottetown tomorrow with a high of 7 degrees. 4 degrees the high in St. John's, Newfoundland with mainly cloudy skies. So there you have it. That is your forecast.
The World Bank's commodity markets outlook says energy prices, food and fertilizer have sustained the largest commodity shock since the 1970s. The outlook says energy prices are expected to rise more than 50% this year before easing next year and again in 2024. Agriculture and metals are expected to increase almost 20% this year before moderating in the next 2 years. But the report says commodity prices are expected to remain well above the most recent 5-year average. They could also climb higher if the war in Ukraine rages on longer. Air Canada said it had a net loss of $974 million in its first quarter as the Omicron variant slowed bookings in January. Company officials said, however, that was an improvement from a $1.3 billion loss a year earlier. The company says it more than tripled revenues to $2.57 billion as sales spiked in March when travel restrictions eased. Air Canada is maintaining its full-year forecast that capacity will average out at roughly 3/4 of 2019. Its capacity, though, continues to lag behind U.S. airlines, and business travel is still at only half the volume it did 3 years ago. Uber has agreed to pay a $19 million U.S. fine in Australia for misleading riders by falsely warning that they could be charged a cancellation fee and for inflating estimates of comparable taxi rides. The Australian Competition and Consumer Commission says the company's Netherlands subsidiary admitted to breaching Australian consumer law. Uber says it cooperated with the commission and made changes to its platform based on concerns raised by investigators. Uber and the commission say they will jointly ask the federal court to order the fine. Social media experts say Elon Musk may run into roadblocks in his plan to ease restrictions on Twitter in the name of free speech. They say the self-described free speech absolutist will face regulatory hurdles after his $44 billion U.S. bid to acquire the social media platform was approved by Twitter's board on Monday. The European Union has already warned Musk that the company must obey local content rules targeting harmful and false information. Other challenges include Canada's plan to reintroduce a bill aimed at reducing hate speech on online platforms. Now, here's a look at today's markets. The TSX was down 321 points on the day to finish at 20,690. The Dow was down 809 points to 33,240. The S&P 500 was down 120 points to 4175, and the Nasdaq was down 514 on the day to 12,490. West Texas Intermediate Oil was up 316 to 101.70 US per barrel. Natural gas was up 18 cents to 6.85 US. Gold was down 5 cents to 19.0546 US an ounce, and silver was even on the day at 23.49 US an ounce. Feed wheat is at $14.23 per bushel, barley's at $10.02, canola's at $26.54, and corn is at $12.04 per bushel. Live cattle were up 90 cents to $140. Feeder cattle were down 35 cents to $156.20, and lean hogs June contract is down $2.85 to $111.18. The Canadian dollar was even over the past 24 hours at 77.97 US. Recapping one of our top stories, the Alberta government announced it is investing $50 million to create a new clean hydrogen centre. Officials say it will drive innovation in the production, deployment, and use of hydrogen across the province. Premier Jason Kenney says Canada and Alberta are ready to shift towards a hydrogen-powered future. There's another convoy apparently headed to Ottawa, except this one is called Rolling Thunder. Political reporter Brian Lilly will have details for us in just a moment, and why this one may be a little bit different. There's been a lot of talk about the inquiry into the use of the Emergencies Act during the Freedom Convoy and various blockades across Canada. Many were not happy with the fact that Prime Minister Justin Trudeau invoked the act. Political reporter and Toronto Sun columnist Brian Lilly has been following this story quite closely, and he joins us now from Toronto. Brian, let's start with the man Trudeau chose to head up the inquiry, Ontario Court Judge Paul Rouleau. Now, there are claims he's a recent Liberal donor and past Liberal Party staffer. Are those claims actually true?
The claim that he's a recent donor, not true as far as I can tell. The fact that he is a past Liberal staffer, absolutely true. So let me break it down for you. There's a guy named Paul Rouleau who lives in Port Colborne, Ontario. I called him on Tuesday morning. I said, your name's being pushed around all over online saying that you're the judge and you're a donor. He said, well, I donate to the Liberal Party. I've been kind of expecting this call from somebody, but you're the first to call. He's not the judge. He said, I know of him. My father was a judge, but I'm not, and I'm not the same guy. So he's not a recent donor. And if he donated prior to 2002, before he was appointed as a judge, that doesn't really matter. But I do have concerns that this is a guy who worked on John Turner's leadership campaign when he was trying to replace Pierre Trudeau as Liberal leader. He helped name the cabinet when John Turner did become Liberal leader and prime minister. And then he worked in his office for several years. And I documented all of this in a column with links to media reports of the day describing him with various official titles. So, this is someone who is very close to the Turner camp, very close to the Liberal Party for a long time. Can he be objective? Sure, but we've got to hope, really.
Now, when the PM announced Rouleau's appointment, Brian, he also announced the terms of the inquiry. Now, you say it focuses too much on the truckers' convoy and not enough on the government.
Yeah, look, the Emergencies Act is quite clear that the inquiry that is mandated by the Emergencies Act needs to look at why the act was invoked. That would include the government response to what was going on. Obviously, you have to look at, okay, what led to the Freedom Convoy coming here? What actions did the convoy organizers or participants take that led to invoking the act? But also, why did the government feel it was necessary? They submitted a report to Parliament back in February, as they were required to do before getting MPs to vote on it, explaining their position. And it was weak, Hal, to say the least, extremely weak. And their attempts to shut down, revealing the reasons in court recently, all lead me to be really concerned about whether we will get what we need. And it's why I really think that Justice Rouleau, since he's been appointed and since we know about his Liberal party ties in the past, he has to show independence and not just look at what the government wants, which is all about the truckers, all about disinformation in the media, a lot of which they spread or planted themselves. He's got to look at what the government actions or inactions were that led to the invocation of the act for the first time in Canadian history.
Brian, let's talk about Rolling Thunder now. It's not a Garth Brooks concert I'm talking about here. It's another convoy apparently headed to Ottawa called Rolling Thunder, and it's already leading to a showdown between police and some of those part of Rolling Thunder because police are not going to allow the group near Parliament?
Well, they're not going to allow vehicles near Parliament. Now, this does not surprise me because we've been hearing that this could become a permanent feature of protests, since the Freedom Convoy arrived in January, or I guess in February, as things started to get tense. A lot of people saying, look, we shouldn't even allow traffic on Wellington Street in front of Parliament Hill. I'm not sure that the people of Ottawa want to go that far, but there is a desire to say, look, you protest all you want, but you can't bring vehicles up. The organizers of Rolling Thunder want to roll through the city. They want to roll through the nation's capital, and they say they want to do a stop at the National War Memorial. So looks like there might be a bit of a showdown there. One of the organizers saying it's going to be a free-for-all if they're not allowed to ride. But what they may need to do is park their bikes all over downtown Ottawa and walk up to Parliament Hill if they want to make their voice heard. Like I said, I wouldn't be shocked if that became a permanent feature. I remember going back over the last 20 years of covering protests on Parliament Hill that there were times when organizers had to negotiate to get vehicles near the Hill. So I was shocked at how many were able to get there during the Freedom Convoy. This resurrects that ongoing battle that I've witnessed over the decades.
So what's the message that the people with Rolling Thunder are bringing? Is it similar to that of the Freedom Convoy?
It is. They want an end to mandates. They say that there's tyrannical legislation in place. And one of the reasons that police have said that they are concerned is that some of the organizers have ties and were involved in the last protest. So, from a policing point of view, you have to be concerned about that. I can tell you that here in Toronto, they blocked off truck access to the area around Queen's Park and the hospital row in front of it. If you don't know, in front of the provincial legislature in Ontario, there's about 7 hospitals in a row. And they blocked that off for several weekends. They allowed the protest to go through. They allowed that to continue, but said no vehicles. So it's not exactly shutting down the right to protest, which is what the Emergencies Act did, but it is saying no vehicles in sensitive areas.
Brian, the Trudeau Liberals have made a number of proposals to regulate the internet, but we found out recently that in response to a proposal to deal with what they called online harms, the government blocked access to any criticism. Is this not censorship?
It really is, because what they were refusing to release were responses to public consultations. So this online harms bill, they never presented the legislation. They said, we want to move forward with this. We want to deal with things like criminal activity online, terrorism online, child sexual exploitation online, all things that we can sit there and say, yeah, you know what? Dealing with that's a good thing. Nobody wants children to be exploited online. Let's move forward with that. But their proposal was so broad, Hal, that it had people comparing it to, the government relations executive for Twitter said that the proposals in front of them from the government were further than what you see in places like China, North Korea, and Iran. That the ability to block websites, to order content taken down within 24 hours with no recourse, and no ability to say, well, no, this is actually legal, or this is why this is there, that this was going too far. The government hid much of the criticisms, and it was only through an access to information request from a law professor at the University of Ottawa who follows this that we were able to find out how bad many people in the industry viewed this, many people concerned about civil liberties viewed this. So the government was trying to hide. They released a summary. This is funny. They released a summary of the public consultation a few months ago called What We Heard. Well, what they heard isn't what was submitted to them, because that report in that summary made it sound like, well, we had a few minor criticisms and we'll go back to the drawing board. No, the criticism was fierce and it was harsh.
There's a proposal to see 24 Sussex Drive ripped down and a huge new residence installed in its place, similar to what? The West Wing of the White House? Brian, do you think this will actually go ahead? And what would the cost be to the taxpayers?
Will it go ahead? Well, I've been hearing about the need to redo in some way 24 Sussex Drive for about 20 years or more. I remember Paul Martin had Rick Mercer in for one of his TV shows, and they were talking about how drafty it was, and they went to Canadian Tire, and remember that people used to put that film up over your windows to keep the drafts out? They were installing that at 24 Sussex. The place is in need of serious repair, and it doesn't fit everything the government would like to do. But some of the proposals that the National Capital Commission, which oversees the property, some of the proposals they've come up with over the years are bizarre. And they have included making it like the West Wing. Well, that's not what the Canadian Prime Minister's residence is like. It probably would be cheaper to knock down what's there and rebuild it. It's very historical on the outside. It's not on the inside, because when the government of Canada basically seized the property from the owners back in 1948, I think it was, they gutted the inside. They said, oh, all this stuff from the Victorian era has to go. They ripped it out and made it very modern inside. But it's kind of cut up and into small little rooms, doesn't really work for entertaining other visiting government heads. And so they want to put up about a 15,000 square foot building with about 4,600 square feet for the residents and the rest for commercial kitchen and places to hold events and the like. I considering how long they've been talking about it, and Justin Trudeau never moved into it since 2015 so that they could do something with it, and it's 7 years later, I think you'll be asking me about this 7 years from now.
Has there been any talk whatsoever about the price tag for a project this huge?
They haven't released anything. They have in the past, but this latest round of proposals, because every time the National Capital Commission comes up with something like this, they get laughed at because they go too far. In this latest round, they did not release a price tag.
Brian, the entire world is watching as crimes against humanity are carried out as part of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. We're talking about executions and rape being used as tools of war. Now, here at home, you're reporting that Ontario Premier Doug Ford is being accused of crimes against humanity by one of Justin Trudeau's MPs. Can you explain?
It was bizarre. It was Monday night in the House of Commons, Hal, and MPs are debating the budget. This is something that they do. They stand up, they make speeches that are mostly for their constituents back home. They'll send out a summary or a video clip and say, see, I'm standing up for you. And in this case, it's Julie Dershowitz, who's a Liberal MP for the Toronto riding of Davenport. And she started talking about climate change and then went on about a CBC report that said Doug Ford was changing how he would arrive at his climate targets. Not that he would abandon them or drop them, that he was going to change his climate targets. And she called this a crime against humanity. Well, Conservative MP from the Edmonton area, Garnet Jennis, he stood up and said, you know, we're watching real crimes against humanity in Europe right now. That's a big claim and accusation that you've just made. Does the member want to withdraw and apologize? And Dershowitz stood up and said, no, I'll double down. She actually said, I will double down, and made the claim that it's a crime against humanity. As I said, this was just an interesting report, and she cited which report it was, but I read the report, and it detailed how they're changing how they will account for their climate change targets being met. Not that they're going to abandon them, but she accused them of abandoning climate change, and that was a crime against humanity. That cheapens the term, which is clearly defined in law. It cheapens the term, it cheapens her office, and it makes her look foolish.
Beer and politics collided last week with two breweries trying to really distance themselves from CPC leadership candidate Pierre Poilievre. Brian, how did booze become a flashpoint in the culture war?
Well, it started last week with Pierre Poilievre's appearance at a brewery, craft brewery here in Toronto called Steam Whistle. And they started to get complaints from people saying, why are you allowing this? So they released a statement saying, this guy just rented the place like everybody else does. And, you know, we're not backing his views. This place has been used by many other politicians in the past. And in fact, Steam Whistle's held events from Justin Trudeau, Peter MacKay, Adam Vaughan, city officials. It's a popular destination because it's a really cool spot. It's the old roundhouse for the railways, and they turned part of it into a brewery with an event space. So they were just saying, hey, don't attack us. But in doing so, they made Conservatives angry who said, well, feels like you're telling us we're not welcome. Well, a couple days later, Poilievre is talking to a crowd in St. Catharines, Ontario, down near Niagara Falls, and he starts going on and talking about Steam Whistle. He actually insults them, called it watered down beer, and it's no good. I'll disagree. But then he promoted a local brewery there called Oast. Oast is, sent out a statement saying they won't have nothing to do with Poilievre. Again, responding because some people were complaining and saying, you better denounce him. And then what they ended up doing in responding to a few Twitter trolls is they ended up angering all kinds of Conservatives. Lots of people said, I'll never drink your beer again to either one of them. I'm sure many of the people saying that had never tried their beer. That's often the case. But it showed that things become very emotional very quickly. I think, and I wrote this in the Sun, that the brewery should have just stayed out. Just ignore the people who are out there trying to make everything political. We all like our politics in Canada, and we all like our beer. Don't start making beer political.
Brian, we only have about 30 seconds left here, but I want to talk about some of the Pierre Poilievre rallies. He was here in Western Canada recently, huge rallies, Calgary, Edmonton, and the Okanagan in British Columbia. And he was also at a rally recently in Toronto. What was the turnout like? You were there for that, right?
Yeah, I was. I went down, and it wasn't as big as what you saw in Calgary, but in Calgary, you got, 5,000 people at one of the events? In downtown Toronto, the event organizers and the event administrators told me that in one room there were 650 people, in the other room there were about 400. So over 1,000 people in downtown Toronto. This is Adam Vaughan's old riding. This is deepest, darkest liberal Toronto. And on a Tuesday night with the Leafs playing the Flyers down the street, he was able to get more than 1,000 people out. That's impressive.
Political reporter and Toronto Sun columnist Brian Lilly, thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you.
Health and wholeness is a quest for many. People have different thoughts on supplements, doctors, and healthcare. So what role should nutrition play in our public healthcare system, and what role should personal responsibility play in the ways of our health? Joining me to discuss health, lifestyle, and nutrition is Chris Robinson from Lethbridge's own Purple Carrot. Chris, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. Okay, so Chris, you're a nutritional consultant, right? And you've been a longtime entrepreneur in Lethbridge, and your store has just recently moved, or I guess expanded is probably a better way to say that. So maybe just give us a quick little backstory on why you moved.
We opened just over 5 years ago, and we started really little, and we didn't expect to grow so quickly. We have a lovely, loyal customer base here, and there's so many wonderful local companies, and we found we outgrew our space really, really quickly. So we were full. We had no room in our store, and so we needed to expand. So we moved down the street to the old Shots building, and now we have 3 times the space. So
yeah, it's interesting. I know we were talking a little bit beforehand about kind of like the need for these healthcare foods or health like nutritional foods now, these stores that carry these kind of products and stuff. So does that kind of tell you a little bit about the choices that people in Southern Alberta are making?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you mentioned earlier that, personal responsibility, we all need to be responsible for our own health, and our choices we make have a huge impact on our health. What foods we put in, the air we breathe, the people we spend time with, how much time we get out in the sun. There's what we believe, so many things like that, they actually affect our body. And so we want to provide a place where we can provide those things that people need to feel better. And when we take time to take care of ourselves, our health is better. And we want to be a part of that for other people.
Mm-hmm. Now, have you always been into health and nutrition?
Absolutely. I grew up on the coast. My parents are super healthy hippies, tie-dye, jean shorts, that sort of thing. We grew wheatgrass in our dining room growing up. My doctor 30 years ago was prescribing vitamins. I saw a chiropractor years ago before it was cool. We grew all our veggies, and for me, it was a part of how I grew up. It's a part of who I am. The smell of a health food store is home to me.
Mm-hmm. So then when you came from the coast to Southern Alberta, did you notice there was a huge gap in the market? And is that why you started your business?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I moved here just over 15 years ago, and I found I was having to go everywhere. And then when I started my nutritional consulting business, I was sending my clients everywhere. And so my business partner, Kathy, and she was my receptionist at the time. We were like, man, what could we do? And I'm like, let's open our own store of all of our favorite things. And then that way we have a one central spot, for us to go to, but for the people who were, supporting and what have you, that they have somewhere to go to as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So as a nutritional consultant, what changes have you noticed in the local population? Let's say like in relation to diet.
I think people are looking to do better. We've noticed in the last few years, oh shoot, there's some stuff going around that could affect our health. And so people are thinking about that. What can I do to make myself healthier? And so we have people coming in, what can I do to support my immune system? What can I do to prevent illness? What can I do this winter? What have you? How do I support these systems in my body? And so we're seeing a lot more of that than we were 2 years ago. A lot more questions on immune support and how do I be healthier? How can I ward off infections?
So what do you tell them? How do you ward off infections?
Well, I think the biggest thing is take care of your body. We need to eat good nutrient dense foods. The more nutrients we get in, the more we eat for a reason. We eat to get nutrients. So we need to make sure we're eating nutrient dense food. We're eating lots of vegetables. We're eating fruit. We're eating good quality foods, and we're not eating too much sugar. I mean, sugar in particular, if you can cut down or cut out sugar, that's the best thing you can do for your immune system. So I always tell people, get in lots of good and try not to get in too much bad.
Okay, there you go. That's great advice. I have a real problem with sugar myself. I'm a sugar
Yeah, well,
holic.
it's so addictive. It's more addictive, they say, than cocaine. Like
Oh my goodness.
it's bad, and it's so common in young kids all the way up to our seniors.
Yeah.
It's addictive and it tastes delicious.
I'm in
But
trouble.
there's so many, yeah, but there's so many really good healthy foods that are delicious too, and I think that's something people miss. We don't realize that you can eat healthy, and it doesn't have to be like you're eating cardboard every day. You can eat really delicious, amazing, healthy foods, and they taste good, and they're good for you.
So now what about food sensitivities? This is a lot, like a huge topic that's come up lately over the past more recent years. I know I myself have certain food sensitivities. So, I know there's many ideas about the sources and causes, but can you maybe give us an example about how you could suggest a path to managing these food sensitivities?
Yeah, and that's actually the basis of my practice. I predominantly deal in food sensitivities and intolerances. And there's a variety of theories as to why this would happen. And in my opinion, in my experience, I think it's a perfect storm of a bunch of things. So stress will affect that. Chemical exposure, chemical is probably not the appropriate word, but toxin exposure, pesticide exposure. Our bodies have systems in place to naturally encourage elimination of toxins, but we're so bombarded by what we put in our hair, what we put on our skin, what's sprayed on our food, what's painted on our walls. I mean, we're exposed to so many toxins. We're adjusting how we're growing our food. We're doing weird things to our food. When you look at the ingredients, you go to the store and you look at that list of ingredients on there, we don't know what half of them are. So we're looking at preservatives and what have you. Like there's so much imbalance when we're constantly, bombarding ourselves with antibiotics and what have you. We deplete our good bacteria. And there's so much research on the microbiome now and our good bacteria. So when our microbiome is out of balance, that's a factor. So there's so many things that play in. And so if we're looking at improving or trying to ward off or trying to avoid food sensitivities, it's eat a variety of different foods. So don't eat the same thing every day. That's key. So overconsumption is another big cause of sensitivity. If you're eating the same thing every day for breakfast or every day for breakfast, lunch, and supper, or what have you, your body can become overwhelmed with that. So eat a variety of foods. Again, eat nutrient-dense food. Eat foods where you know where that food came from. Where does an apple come from? A tree? Where doesn't it come from? We know where certain foods come from. So eat real foods. Do you know where FD&C yellow came from, or disodium guanylate, or propylene glycol, or those weird things that are in our food? We shouldn't be eating those things. So eat real foods. Eat less sugar again, and affect your immune system. And de-stress is huge. But there's a lot of things. Reduce your toxin exposure. That's really important.
So would you say then like eating organic is maybe the way to go?
I'm a fan of eating organic for sure. I try and eat as much organic as possible. To me, it just makes sense. If there's less spray on there, there's less things that my body has to deal with. So the cleaner food that I can eat, the less work my detoxification pathways have to do, the less work my liver has to do, the less work my kidneys have to do. And that's good for me. So that's what I want. So like I said, less toxin exposure. And if one of the ways I can reduce toxins is by making sure they're not on my food, I do that for sure.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So would you say that food sensitivities are the same as allergies, or are they maybe two different things?
No, they're different. So like a true allergy, like a peanut allergy, is different than a food sensitivity or a food intolerance. And so depending on what practitioner you're seeing, so if you're seeing a doctor for allergies, they'll look for a particular antibody in your blood, or you can see a naturopath for a different blood work and they'll look for a different antibody, and that would be a food sensitivity or an intolerance. It's typically where we're not seeing something in the blood, but you're like, I know when I eat gluten, I feel crummy, but maybe your doctor says there's no allergy, or your naturopath says there's no sensitivity, but there's something going on there. And usually those intolerances are usually more when you're just not breaking down that food properly. So lack of enzymes, which would be another cause of food intolerances. We're just not breaking down our food properly.
Like, I guess, like how you're living, a lifestyle, even like a healthy home, for example. How does a home relate to allergies with food sensitivities? Is there a relationship there?
Oh, it's huge. For sure. I mean, and it's sort of what came first, the chicken or the egg. So if we have food sensitivities, we're going to be more likely to be reactive to other things in our environment. If we're reactive to things in our environment, that can affect us having more food sensitivities. And so again, when we look at, our air fresheners and our hairspray and our cleaning supplies, and there's some really alarming and compelling information about our cleaners we use in our house, about I never like to name names, but the Febrezes or the Glade plugins and what have you, and the toxicity that those cause.
Yeah,
And
those typical ones that you pick up at the grocery store or wherever, right?
yeah, your body has to deal with that. Everything you breathe in, everything that touches your skin, everything that you're consuming, your body has to deal with that. Your liver has to deal with that. Your kidneys have to break that down. We have to try and get rid of that. And a lot of the times we just can't keep up. We can't keep up to the toxic load we're exposed to. We should be able to. Our body should be able to do it on its own, but we can't. And so eliminating those toxins in our house are huge. And there's some really incredible studies, and sorry, I should have had one off the top of my head and I don't, but the correlation between allergies and toxins in the home and how many health problems they cause.
That's interesting. So, I mean, we want to have a clean home, obviously. So what is the alternative then if you don't want to break out that Mr. Clean or whatever? I've heard that there's like organic products out there. Is that the way to go?
Yeah, there's lots of cleaner products out there. I mean, really, in all honesty, most of those products make the job easier. They're going to melt away the scrubbing bubbles, that sort of thing. So it's elbow grease. Elbow grease is your biggest alternative. And so, vinegars and baking soda is super simple, super cheap. They work well. You just got to work a little harder for that. But, there are a lot of products out there. We carry all sorts of natural cleaners and what have you that work really well, and they smell good. And they smell good from essential oils that are in there. So there's no toxic chemicals or what have you. So there's a lot of products that are out there, but you can use really simple things that you probably already have in your home that work really well, so long as you're willing to put a little muscle into it.
Yeah, that was interesting. I'm going to give that a try. Maybe talk about the relationship between food choice and our emotional well-being, because we often think physical or physiological when it comes to food, but it can affect our moods and our emotions as well, and just everything mentally, right?
Oh, for sure. I mean, they talk about in natural medicine or in the natural health industry, the gut-brain connection, and it sort of goes both ways. So if your guts are unhappy, you have an imbalance in your microbiome, there's too many bad guys, not enough good guys, that can affect your mental well-being, and vice versa. So if you're stressed, if your cortisol levels are high and you're running ragged and what have you, that's going to affect that. And so we'll see that, oh, I got butterflies in my tummy, or, I'm nervous. So people will sometimes have to run to the washroom if they're nervous. And so it goes both ways. And so when we have a healthy diet and we have a healthy gut, that can affect our mental well-being. And when we work hard at having a happy mental well-being and we're doing the things we need to do, we're having self-care, we're getting outside, maybe you're meditating or praying or doing whatever you do to calm yourself, that will have a positive impact on your digestive system and therefore the rest of your health as well. So it goes both ways.
Mm-hmm. Do you have maybe an example of a really dramatic change in one of your clients who maybe switched their lifestyle like this, maybe switched to these organic products or switched to organic foods instead? What kind of a difference did it make in them?
Oh God, I have hundreds of stories. One of my favorites is one more recently. It was a customer came into the store, and I knew her a couple of different ways. So she wasn't actually my client, but she came in the store and she's like, I'm so inflamed, my joints hurt, my feet hurt, I'm having hot flashes all night, I feel terrible. And I was like, okay. So I suggested that she follow an anti-inflammatory diet. So basically an anti-inflammatory diet is we take out foods that cause inflammation. So I find dairy, gluten, corn, sugar are the big ones. So I suggested she pull out those foods and increase her vegetables. And so then a week later, she emailed me and she's like, oh my gosh, this is so hard. This is terrible. I just want to eat marshmallows and s'mores when I go camping.
That would have been the hardest week of my life to cut out. Like,
yeah,
I mean, I love popcorn. So like you have to eliminate corn and, of course, the carbs, the gluten, the sugar.
Yeah. And so it was a lot. And so she was freaking out. I said, You can do this. Right now it's hard, but this is that emotional eating. You want to crave those foods, make you temporarily feel good. So stick through it. It's going to get easier, I promise. And then a week, maybe 2 weeks later, I see her walk in the store and she's walking towards me with this look on her face. And I was like, oh no, she's going to be so mad. And she was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe how good I feel. She's like, my joint pain is gone. I feel so amazing. I'm not having hot flash tonight. She's like, I feel so good. I can't even believe the difference. And then that's the way she just continues to eat, because she feels so good that way, that she just, it's not worth it to eat the s'mores or the McDonald's or whatever it is she wanted to eat before. And that's the thing, it's hard at first, and we're emotional creatures. We emotionally eat. So when you make a dietary change to start, it's difficult. But if you can get past that and then you start seeing the benefits from it, it's so much easier to stick to it. And then it's worth it.
Yeah, what a great example that is. I love that. It's an actual real life example. And it just goes to show you don't necessarily need those prescriptions. Sometimes it's just eliminating certain things that we're just consuming a lot of. That's amazing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and again, it's our food. Your food is your foundation for your health. We have to start with food if we want to be healthy. And vitamins and supplements and herbs, man, they have a place. And again, I could tell you a million stories about those where I'm blown away at the results. But you can take the best vitamin in the world or the best this in the world or what have you. If you don't have that foundation in place of eating well and drinking lots of water, nothing's going to improve. So we want to start with that foundation of a good diet.
Yeah, fantastic advice. Chris, thank you so much. It looks like we are out of time, but we appreciate you coming on today and educating us like this.
My pleasure. It's my favorite thing to talk about.
That's great. Chris Robinson is the owner of Lethbridge's own Purple Carrot and a nutritional consultant. We're so glad to have her on today. I'm Jeanette Roche on behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News. Thanks for watching.